Das KopFM-Team meldet sich ein weiteres Mal aus Graz, heute mit dem Telefongast Mark Hazlewood und das Thema Planet X und die Folgen. Ja, und wer mit Mark Hazlewood, der übrigens gestern auf Coast to Coast zu Gast war, interaktiv in Kontakt treten möchte, der kann das tun über den Cropcom, erreichbar über die Website von CropFM, CROPFM, und dann auf Cropcom klicken. Wir sehen diesen Live-Chat im Studio ein und reagieren auf Fragen. Bei mir heute zu Gast, wie gesagt, Mark Hazlewood am Telefon, und wir werden über den Planeten X sprechen. Das Interview wird auf Englisch geführt werden. Mark, are you there?
I'm here. Thank you very much.
Hi. So now you couldn't pronounce mine, and now I called you Mike. I'm sorry.
That's okay. There's been several others who've done that.
Really?
You're not the first. It won't be the last.
Oh my God. So maybe you're supposed to be Mike. Who knows? Okay, Mark. Well, I already did three shows about the subject Planet X and Nibiru and the Sumerians. So the listeners are most of the listeners that follow the show are familiar with the subject. What I would like to know at the beginning maybe is how you came involved with this subject personally.
All right. Well, as a young child growing up in Los Angeles, in the 60s, I was exposed to, like I guess many others at the time, some earth change prophecy through a man by the name of Edgar Casey. You might be familiar with him.
Yeah, I heard about him, yes. He was
right,
very...
Well, this started out and led to an interest in prophecy, or earth change myths, so to speak. And so over maybe a time span of some 20 to 30 years, I kept collecting these accounts of prophetic utterances from either ancient sources or we have an echo. Do you hear this?
No, I don't hear. Oh, now I hear it. Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if it's causing a problem with the show, but certainly in my ear.
Yeah, well, it's not audible here that much, so maybe someone is listening in. You never know.
All right. Well, I'll just keep talking. Anyway, so I probably at a certain point found some over 100 and read over 100 different earth change type prophecies from different cultures, from as long away as a few thousand years to modern people such as Laurie Del Toy and there are several others today. Gordon Michael Scallion certainly is one. Chet Snow is another. So there was simply an interest, a casual interest, and I really hadn't nailed down the Planet X connection at that point. But at one point, my son, I have a grown son, and I both had what is known as, simultaneous earth change dreams, tidal wave dreams, in fact. We both live on a peninsula here in central Florida, and he dreamed of a tidal wave washing over the state, and within a couple of days I had a similar dream, except I dreamed of two tidal waves, one washing from one direction, another from another direction. So I took this as a sign to do further study and research. And once I developed a certain clarity after my research, I realized there was a definitive reason for these Earth changes to come about. And decided at that point, because of this clarity that I developed, that I would share it with others and write a book, because I didn't think it was being presented in a fashion that people could readily grasp, and I certainly knew that there weren't too many super nerds like myself, at least at the side of myself, that would do the kind of research and spend the time that I did to develop this clarity. So this burden was kind of placed on myself by myself to share this, and that's initially what led to me writing my first book. Now, the second book was the information that was shared with me over the last 3 years since writing the first book from professional researchers, scientists, astrophysicists, astronomers, Nobel Prize winners, doctors and researchers from all over the globe. The best of the research from other sources that actually did this professionally. I was never a professional researcher. I don't have the credentials to back it up either. But I decided to put myself in an executive position and simply organize their research, the best of the best, the cream of the crop, so to speak, and put that into delicate earth. And I turned away from prophecy at that point, too, so it's all science and history and modern disclosures and leaks from insiders, which will have, I assume, a broader appeal, because some people, once they see any section of a book that discusses prophecy, well, they put it into a different light. So this is a very serious text, and once you dig into it, at the end, you'll know that this is the reality. Extrasolar objects come through solar systems on a regular basis, and we have one that comes through on a cyclical orbit.
Yeah, and I read parts of your second book because I got a copy, and it is, so to say, a collection of emails or a collection of statements by various people. Is that correct?
Which book are you discussing?
Delicate Earth History, Science, your latest book.
It represents a number of different sources, from people who have sat down with me personally, to people who have created reports themselves, to, like you just mentioned, emails, from pieces out of books. I mean, it is an array of different venues that this information came in from, and simply put into one text.
Okay. So, what is the information then? If you want to condense it now, what is it that your two books talk about? They talk about an impending solar member that has not been discovered until this day. What is the implication of it?
Well, okay. In a nutshell, the information simply shows that we have this extrasolar body that goes by many names according to ancient historical sources, and when it comes through in the past, it has disrupted the surface of this planet and probably several others that it's passed, along with its entourage of objects that have come through. You might describe what is known as Earth changes. Now, I am not saying I know exactly what's going to happen this time. I can say what has happened in the past and what could possibly be expected this time based on previous passages. Now, it has left its mark at least the last 14 passages in a row. So I would expect that something along the lines of what it's done previously could most certainly happen this time. But I'm not a prophet. I'm not a seer. I simply looking at the facts and stating probabilities. That's all, based on those facts. And what could happen would be something called a physical pole shift. Now, that's not to say that the objects that are coming through currently, the solar system of objects that accompany this large star, it is a dwarf, which is a dwarf star.
A collapsed sun.
Pardon me?
A collapsed sun, or is it?
No, it's not collapsed. It's just a sun. A dwarf is known as a cross between a planet and a sun. What makes it part sun is it's a lot denser and it has a slow smoldering fusion going on like a sun. So it's, I suppose, astronomers' attempt at naming an object that isn't quite a sun, but has sun-like properties and isn't a planet because it's much more dense and has those sun-like properties.
So a sun that didn't ignite, so to say.
There you go. A sun that didn't ignite, not necessarily one that collapsed.
Yeah, okay.
But when it comes through our solar system, once it enters into the solar field, it becomes a comet because the solar field itself causes it to develop a negative charge, like most objects, and it pulls in the debris hanging in the balance. And it's this debris that it pulls into the nucleus that causes a tail to form, and even to the point of some of this debris landing on the object and causing it to grow. Now, when it comes through, any one of its entourage could certainly impact. And I've heard from a very good source, a triple doctorate, in fact, that from what he understands, the majority of cratering on the moon and the Earth, which you don't see because it's covered up, happens during the time when this object comes through. You know, starting as early as several decades, or even 100 or so years prior and after this object passes. So even without the electromagnetic gravitational wave that could hit the surface of the Earth and cause a physical pole shift, a number of objects that come with it before or after could actually impact. And the high probability is that that impacts could happen at this time.
And we saw a lot of asteroids in close encounters with various comets and asteroids in the last weeks, didn't we?
Well, it's not just the last week. They've been streaming through on a regular basis, and as you well know, the major media is not connecting the dots. I mean, there has been a long list of meteor showers and objects passing overhead, and meteors even hitting different places that have gone on over the last year. And if you pay attention to the SOHO website, this is the satellite that looks at the sun, you can see these objects coming in from that one direction and their impact on the sun. As they hit the sun and pass by the sun's surface discharges. So there's a direct electrical connection between these objects, the discharging sun, the energy coming in from those discharges, and the effects on our weather here, which we are labeling global warming. But global warming is happening on Mars at this time. And there's no civilization that's polluting there that is causing the global warming on Mars, obviously. So if there's any impact from our pollution, it's very minuscule. The majority of it is from the discharges from the sun, which is at an all-time maximum, and we should be at a solar minimum right now.
Yeah, you're right. And of course, the warming of Mars has been recognized. And then, of course, when you say the discharges that those comets that plunge into the sun cause, you're also referring to James Mc Ceanny's theories about the electric, the electric environment in which we live here in our solar system.
The electric universe is something he's coined.
The electric universe. So he also stresses the fact that there is an electric phenomena going on, and I think he also stated once that the comet tails are, at least in part, caused by those discharges. Is that correct?
Well, there is an electrical interplay that, he certainly explains better than I. He's got some interesting theories about it, but it's obvious it is happening. But yes, the comet's tail and the nucleus interact with the sun and can cause it to discharge either in part or the entire surface to lift off, as in a coronal mass ejection.
So we have, and James Mc Ceanny might be on the show in a month maybe from now. So you are quite in line with him regarding the theory.
Well, yeah. In fact, just in the last few weeks, we've had a radio show together. We've given live talks together. Now, he's certainly a lot more learned in this area and is a credentialed scientist, and I'm simply learning all this on the fly, picking up bits and pieces along the way as I go.
Yeah. When was the last passage of Planet X, to your opinion, according to your opinion, and what are the marks that have been left from previous passages? What's the evidence that's been left?
All right. Well, the last passage was from Planet X specifically was some around 1600 BC, between 1600 and 1700 BC. But I believe the entourage of objects that accompany Planet X, some of the larger ones, came through as much as 200 or 300 years prior to that. Objects came through that orbit Planet X and started causing disruptions then. But Planet X showed up when it should, on its normal approximately 3,600 to 3,700 year orbit, and left its mark in the form of, the most obvious worldwide evidence from that specific time frame are the narrowing of tree rings from that time, because this is evidence that is much more accurate than any carbon dating of any ecological evidence from that time. Whatever trees that were alive that time from any part of the world show for at least a couple decades extreme narrowing, and that is very telling. This would not be happening globally. It's not a localized event unless something in the order of an extreme pollution event caused by a passing or impacting or both celestial object at that time, and the resulting cometary debris from the tail or volcanoes that would have been going off accompanying this event.
Triggered by
Triggered
by the gravitational influences of the passing.
Yeah, that certainly would be part of it. The electrical interplay would certainly come into being there.
Gravitational, I meant gravitational impact. There might also be, as you mentioned, a physical pole shift, and therefore a gravitational impact of the passing planet.
Oh well, yes. The likelihood that both happen is rather high. Whenever this object comes through, like I said, the other objects are right with it and prior and afterwards. But there's also evidence that the seas, the oceans, from that specific time period dropped. Again, this is not a localized event, which is really rather significant if you're studying it. Significantly at that time. So there could have been an impact possibly in the ocean, and one ocean from one of the objects that accompanied it, and part of the seas may have emptied into the crater or the gap left by this impact, because the ocean levels dropped some 20 feet at that time. Now, there would also be flooding, of course, because of this impact, so it would be a combination of factors that all rolled into one. But from that time frame, definitively the seas worldwide dropped 20 feet.
Coming back to the evidence, you were referring to growth rings of trees before.
Pardon me?
Before you were referring to growth rings of trees, growth patterns of trees?
Yes, the narrowing of the tree rings from that time period.
I assume that these are fossils that were examined. Is that correct? Or, I mean, that you might not find a tree that is 3,000 years old, or is there? I don't know.
Well, there certainly would be a combination of both trees that possibly could be that old. There are some very old trees, but fossilized remains of trees, yes, that would play into it.
Okay.
And be very accurate also as far as what dates we're talking about.
Yeah, but when you so what are the previous evidence of the passages? Because you said that it has already passed 14 times, or we can still recollect the evidence of the last 14 passages. What are what's the remaining scarves of the previous passages?
Well, it's mainly to do with the ecological evidence of a calamitous event that happened during those times. I only collected ecological evidence going back that far and put it into my first book, Blindsided. Now, I concentrated on the last 3 passages for my my newest book because that evidence is a lot more clear.
And the evidence of the previous passages before the last one is basically the same, tree rings and fossil.
Well, no, the evidence for the tree rings would only go back to the last passage because it'd be really rather difficult to find tree rings that go back even 2 passages ago.
Okay.
No, this would be either ice core evidence or sediment evidence of some calamitous event happening to the Earth at that time that you could find locally but also globally. You have to sift through it and read it one by one and then put it all together for yourself and then look closely at the dates. And there's some, 15 or 20 pages in Blindsided that does that for you.
Okay, so but when people now
there's tidal wave evidence. There's evidence that certain continents or certain parts of the world, of course, sunk underneath the seas. There's evidence from sediment that was left from these tidal waves that came in from those times.
Yeah,
I got the book right here. I should just open it up and take a look at it. give you a long list and read it. Probably bore you to tears.
No, but now when people hear your theory, and of course this is a very scary theory because you're talking about major impacts that a passage would have. But how can you be sure that all the evidence that you collected for the last 4 passages in fossil records, in other records that can be measured, what makes you sure, or what convinces you that all of those events were caused by the same cause, that all those events had the same origin, Planet X?
Okay, well, not all of the events may have been caused by Planet X, in fact, but they do line up rather nicely as far as the timetable goes. So let's say Planet X came through on the other side of the sun relative to the Earth, and its electromagnetic gravitational wave was not that significant during a passage, let's say 5 passages ago. Well, if there's evidence there, and there is, that it did have an impact, more than likely it was from its entourage and not from it specifically. And even the entourage could have been simply a passage if these objects were large enough and didn't even have to be an impact to leave the carbon dating ecological fossil records.
Okay. Now, back to the now, the here and now. What is the present time evidence of an incoming large, major solar object?
Well, the first thing that I would like to point out is that this object has been known for decades by certain parts of our government. And this has leaked out on a number of different occasions. And at one point was announced back at the end of 1983 by the chief scientist of the IRAS satellite. But probably the best evidence that you could find in a local library here would be from the New Illustrated Science and Invention Encyclopedia. The researchers, through their connections, found out what Pioneers 10 and 11 found out in space. That were the first space probes that we sent out there. And they triangulated two different objects. Our twin sun or dark star that's on this diagram in the encyclopedia that I have on my website under press release. And they also found this 10th planet. And simply matter-of-factly put this evidence under Volume 18, the 1987 through 1989 editions.
So they found two objects out there. Is that what you just said? They found the twin sun, and they found Planet X, which is also kind of not a twin sun. It's a sun. Well, it is a twin sun that hasn't ignited. So they found two of those.
That's correct. From what I understand, the majority of solar systems, some 70+%, are binary, and our solar system is average in that regard. And I've also read that the average binary has a dwarf, an object that orbits around or back and forth between the two suns. So
like Sirius.
Our solar system would be average in both regards.
And it's interestingly enough, what you just said now is exactly what the Sirius star system looks like.
Okay.
There are three stars there, and a white dwarf, which is Sirius B. And yeah, that's interesting. Go on.
I've also heard from insider sources that we have been viewing this object through a Hubble telescope. And, of course, the public at large is being kept in the dark. A man from Florida, a triple doctorate, who read my first book and who's interested in this subject and drew on his connections, attended a private meeting outside of Boston at the Boston Science Museum, May 23rd, 2002. There were 24 people, including government officials, at this meeting, and everyone got to see two extrasolar objects, one being Planet X, and the other was one of these newly discovered objects within the past couple of years called 2001 KX76. He was told at that time, based on the speed that they thought Planet X was traveling, that it would be here in 3.5 years. Now, he's also learned that the object has speeded up and slowed down since then. And whether his information is correct or not, I don't know. So I just give you that information and let you make your own decisions as to whether you believe it is accurate or not. I can't go around and prove it, although there was a third party, a woman approached me that wanted to verify this information that this doctor, in fact, existed, and I gave the contact information to her, and she contacted him and discussed another one of the things that he's interested in, some technology, some health technology, the first couple phone calls, and then slowly got into the Planet X subject and received the same information and verified, in fact, that this guy existed, and what I was saying about having contacted him and having known him was true. I put this in my new book, Delicate Earth, and again, you can decide with that evidence whether you want to believe this is true or not as far as this triple doctorate goes. He does not want to be a hero, so he won't allow me to use his name. But if you contact me personally, I'll tell you his name, but not in the media, not on my website.
Okay, and people can, of course, get a hold of you by I've linked you up. I've linked up your website, and they can also look at your books and everything.
Yeah, I have my telephone number and my email address there. They can contact me.
Great, so anyone can contact you. Now, another question. I mean, how big is Planet X? That's the first part of the question, then I have another one.
Okay. Well, I would... the first person I would think of as far as size goes would be Robert Harrington. He was the head of the Naval Observatory, who has written quite a bit of papers about Planet X. And in fact, from what I understand, he was killed because of his adamant disclosure to the public about Planet X. He was going down to the southern hemisphere with a telescope in hand just to get one last look, and that's when he supposedly developed rapid onset cancer, which is part of a kind of a death menu that these rogue government people have if they want to make something look kind of natural. But, you know, a perfectly healthy middle-aged man suddenly comes down with cancer that kills him within 2 weeks. I don't think so. It all had to do with the papers that he was disclosing about Planet X. Him being the head of the Naval Observatory, more than likely they took care of their own, so to speak. He said that Planet X was 3 to 5 times as large as Earth. So there's the answer to your question. I had to tie that all in together.
Okay. Now, there are a lot of amateur astronomers out there, and you know where I'm going to now. Why hasn't... And this planet is supposed to pass us by. I mean, you hear time windows like in the next 5 years and next 10 years. So, regarding the fact that it has a total orbit of 3,600 years, it must be pretty close now. Or it should be pretty close now, if it is indeed due to a passage. So why hasn't anyone seen this object? I mean, why isn't there any first-hand evidence? Here it is, Planet X.
Well, the best of my information is you're not going to be able to see this object unless you go down to the southern hemisphere because of the direction it's coming in from. It's going to be crossing the elliptical plane that the other planets orbit in. So unless you have access to viewing down south, you're not going to be able to see it. Now, there are disinformation websites set up that supposedly see it coming in from the opposite direction, which is completely ridiculous, and fabricated pictures being thrown about here and there to further throw people off base. But from what I understand, unless you have access to the southern hemisphere, you're not going to be able to view it. The United States government went down to Australia and entered into an agreement with actually it was the military, entered into an agreement with the Australian military and started a project known as Project Wormwood at the Laremouth Observatory. And this project you can read about if you go to my website. It's the first link on the top left-hand corner. It is to study and defend the world against incoming objects. So they're really being rather candid in naming the project Wormwood, because Wormwood is simply one of the long list of names that has been given to this object. This one happens to come from the Bible.
Well, so... unless you're in the southern hemisphere, I mean, South Africa wouldn't be south enough, so you would have to be in the Arctic, in the Antarctic.
Antarctic, New Zealand, Australia. I think you'd have to be that far south. Now, whether you'd have to have a large scope, an observatory type scope or not, I am not sure. I know there's been a haze that's been in the southern hemisphere covering up good viewing. Whether that haze is still there or not, I don't know. I know James Mc Ceanny went down and tried to view this object and found out that this haze was preventing good viewing. But I'm sure there are radio telescopes and large observatories that probably could see this thing right now coming in and are trying to figure out what they can do or what it will do or a combination thereof.
So I have to come back once more to this question. So is there any, have you ever seen yourself any evidence from amateur astronomers from Australia or New Zealand that had first-hand evidence of an inbound planet? Or
no, I have not. I haven't seen any amateur astronomers come forward. That doesn't mean that there hasn't been. But I don't contact everyone, that's for sure, that's got information in around the subject. In fact, more than likely, I just scratched the surface of the information that's out there.
Okay. Now, if we are indeed due to a cataclysm, and that's what basically is being described as a passage of Planet X, what is the game plan here? I mean, why doesn't no one prepare us for this? Isn't there any way? I mean, the Earth has survived hundreds, maybe or thousands of passages. So, I mean,
correct.
Why aren't we told what's going to happen? Couldn't that save a lot of lives if that's indeed going to happen?
Well, I would assume that it has to do with panic and the collapse of the financial markets, but specifically, to put it in real terms, business, it's all about business. Any information that would affect business negatively is generally held back by the major media and the people that control the flow of this kind of information. And so that is why these disinformation campaigns to make the Planet X an extrasolar object subject look silly or look like it's on the fringe are created to protect business interests. I mean, can you imagine you're an average corporation with, let's say, that sells stock to the public, and all of a sudden your business buddies that are possibly connected with the people that know about Planet X coming in decide on their own unilaterally to announce what they know. Well, your stockholders may be a little upset when people get wind of this and decide that their money in a long-term investment is not the place to keep their money and start pulling out. And this is just one example of something that could happen all over. So it is information that is not good for business, and this economy and this world is all about business.
So do you think that those business guys can build up such big pressure that all of those honest guys out there, which there must be millions, can't say what they want to tell the rest of the world?
Can you repeat the question, please?
So you think that the power of the business guys or the bad guys is that big that all those zillions of honest guys out there that know about the subject can't come to the surface?
Well, I don't know that there are zillions.
Well, okay.
But I would suspect that you can't keep everyone quiet all the time. Otherwise, someone like me wouldn't be discussing it. Because I did my research originally from books and over the internet and with talking with people face-to-face and over the phone. And I did not necessarily have, a long list of insiders to begin with, although that has grown over the years. So, if I can find this information out and come up with all the detail I have and put it together like I have, I'm sure that if someone else goes out there, they'll find it too. Not everyone is shutting up. Not everyone is part of these people that want to keep this information quiet. And I don't know that these people are necessarily the bad guys just because they're in business. I mean, they're looking out for thousands of people. They're stockholders, and at the same time, they're caught between a rock in a hard space, a catch-22, if you will. If they say something, there'll be a group of people that will come down on them for saying something. And if they don't say something, I mean, you can understand the position they're in.
Yeah. Back maybe to Planet X itself. Are there any estimates of how close it might come to Earth? That's actually someone asking in the live chat.
Well, it all depends on whether it passes on our side of the sun, in other words, between the Earth and the sun, and the other side of the sun. And from what I understand, it has two passages, some few years apart. So, we'll experience the first passage at one point, and then maybe in another handful of years or less than 10 years, it'll come back from the direction it passed us by and head back out to the other foci. It's the other twin sun, and then we won't see it for another 36 or 3,700 years. But how close it'll pass? Well, I suppose it could pass as close as 15 to 25 million miles. I don't know, but either of those figures are really too close for comfort.
And of course, even 15 or 20 million miles might sound a lot, so it won't impact the Earth, but even at this distance, it might have a major impact. That's what you're saying.
Well, yes, and it does bring in its entourage, but even from that distance, action at a distance, a term coined by Professor McKinney, would give you some indication that it alone, without its entourage, passing at, let's say, 20 million miles, could certainly cause a physical pole shift here. And even if it moved the poles just a single percentile, let's say 8 or 9%, that has the potential of taking out a good portion of the population here because of the waters that would be moving and sloshing 50, 100 miles inland where 95% of our population lives.
Yeah, we're getting static on the line again.
Okay.
Can you hear it? But that's okay. I mean, I think we can continue.
All right. It's been ongoing on the entire time.
Oh, on this side of the line, it was only coming up the last minute or so.
Oh, okay.
Well, maybe our phone is being tapped. Who knows?
Well, it seems like during radio shows, my phone tends to have more problems than not.
Oh, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which leads me up to my next question. It's disinformation. I mean, whether anyone can confirm with 100% Planet X or not, there is a lot of disinformation going on around the subject, which is kind of odd, because if there's nothing to it, why launching those disinformation campaigns, as the lady you only want to refer to as the person that has been brought up as a disinformationist? Why is that? Why do you think is all that information going on?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. They need to make this information questionable in the majority of people's eyes to keep business going smoothly until the very last minute. And this decision was made decades ago, and whether you fault them for that or not, it's not the issue. So people like myself, there have been a long list of character assassinations made about me. Now, no one ever talked about me prior to this subject. I was, kind of off the...
You were blindsided.
Yeah, I was blindsided by that part of the equation. I had no idea it would be up and coming, that people would actually pay attention to me and talk about me, because it's not about me. I mean, I don't do anything different than the next person. I simply present information that these guys don't want out there. So many times they focus on me, which is kind of ridiculous, because That's one of the reasons why I did what I did with Delicate Earth. I pulled together everyone else's research and organized it and took myself out of the equation completely. So, they can attack me all they want. Delicate Earth is not about me.
And did you ever get into serious problems doing what you're doing the work you do? Have you ever been intimidated, apart from drizzling phone lines, which maybe I might give you another call, I don't know.
Well, yes. Just the other day, a fake radio show was created for me.
Oh, we talked about it before, because I also was in contact with James Mc Ceanny, Professor Mc Ceanny, and he didn't think that my show was real.
Yeah, well, that's because probably of what I let him know about what happened to me. For whatever reason, he couldn't check you out to his satisfaction, so he became suspicious because he gets followed around a lot. Now, I've been followed around somewhat, and my family members have been hassled a bit, and my phone has been forwarded several different times to local businesses during the time of radio shows. And my website has been tampered with and taken down, and I constantly am sent hundreds of viruses on a daily basis. So,
Mark, I think I'll call you back because you're passing out right now. Mark?
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So, okay. Talk to you in a second.
I'll talk to you in a few minutes.
Okay.
Bye.
Wir werden versuchen, Mark Hazlewood gleich nochmal zu erreichen. Denn wir haben da leider immer mehr Probleme mit der Telefonleitung bekommen. Ich komme gleich wieder. Mark, can you hear me? Mark?
Yeah, I'm here.
I'm here, okay. So that's much better again. So what was the last thing we were talking about? We were talking about disinformation and fake shows that are being set up.
Well, there was one specific fake show within the last few weeks where these characters, I didn't check them out, which was, I guess, my fault. They created a radio show type environment, kind of mimicking a radio show, and everyone that came on, they immediately went to the callers, which was kind of odd, like these people were calling in, but they were all fake. They were all people that were acting. But here's the deal. They were basically giving me some veiled threats, because each one of the callers came in, said they had something to do with disclosing Planet X information. And each of them had a story to tell about what happened to them. Either one guy's hand was chopped off, another guy was set up on a trumped-up drug charge, another person, they said, was killed in an auto accident. It was just gross stuff. And once I heard, 3 or 4 stories, and I listened carefully to the people, I knew it was all fake. This is the kind of thing I have to deal with. And, I don't really believe I'm in danger per se, because, I think they want me to think that, because people that have a carte blanche to go out and kill, they don't threaten. They just do it. So I figure I'm safe if they keep threatening me.
Yeah.
You can that.
You're fading out again, but let's see how it goes.
Okay.
Okay, so you have been under threat, but so far nothing really shooed your way, so to say.
No, in fact, I'm the kind of guy that gets egged on by that kind of treatment. In other words, I know I've really latched on to something if somebody's giving me a problem. In fact, I have a fellow researcher here who may have found out one of the billionaires behind the disinformation campaign. I have no reason to state his name, but this guy is obviously in the know, having colleagues at major observatories and having produced certain films about incoming objects, and yet he is opposing anyone bringing forth honest, correct scientific information in the form of disinformation, and more than likely is paying for these cyber terrorists and other people like a guy by the name of Phil Plait that is in the pocket of NASA. He's an admitted consultant for NASA that is opposing this information.
So we're coming to the end. We have about 5 or 6 minutes left. What I would like to ask you is, knowing all this information, do you prepare yourself?
All right. Preparing is something, physically preparing is something that you have to be financially able to do. And if I was, I would. But I think the most significant aspect to preparing is, first of all, psychologically preparing. In other words, understanding understanding that you are basically an immortal, in that you may have a physical body, but it's only temporary, and that your consciousness goes on forever. But that's a philosophical way to prepare. There is another physical way to prepare that I have, and that is I am very health conscious, and I am in the middle of writing a third book that has nothing to do with Planet X, although the tie-in would be if you are physically fit, you are more likely to be able to get through this than somebody else. I go to the gym on a regular basis doing muscle training. I can subsist off of liquids only, which are not supposed to be able to build muscle and only consume liquids, which is totally not true. They're really
now it's really bad.
It's a wave.
Yeah, now it's a wave.
They don't want us to talk at all now.
Got it. Well, there you go.
Well, I might as well hang up. If you want to call me back, try again.
Well, we're almost at the end, so...
All right.
So what you're doing is preparing spiritually for this impact.
Spiritually and physically. I do what is known as Kundalini exercises on a regular basis, the 5 rites with the breathing, and I do cardiovascular work. So I work on myself physically constantly, and I'm in better shape than I was at any time in my life. I'm in my late 40s. I'm almost 48, and I look to be in my early 30s.
Well, yeah, I've seen a little clip, which is also linked up in the website, and you look very young. You're right.
I look a little different now because I've grown my hair and I've gained a little muscle, but it's pretty much the same look.
Okay. So, is there anything? Just the last sentence. Is it? What do you expect for the near future? Do you expect any change in this regard in the behavior of the government, or the solar activities?
Static is so high, I can hardly hear you now.
Okay. Well, I think then we have only a couple of minutes left, so I don't think. I think we should then end it here, maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
Just have them visit my website if they want to find out more about it, and click through to the other websites that I recommend.
Okay, it is linked up, and maybe you can also link it from your side. Thank you very much for coming, Mark, and I hope we can repeat this once with a hopefully better telephone line then.
Yeah, well, I don't believe it's my line. My line seems to be fine unless I get on the radio.
Oh, my God.
I got lucky last night, though.
Okay, well, let's see. But nevertheless, maybe you can give us an update in a couple of months from now.
I'd appreciate being able to give you all an update. Thank you so much for having me on.
Okay, thank you for coming. And, I wish you all the best.
Thank you much. Take care.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Ja, das war James Mc Ceanny mit leichten Problemen der Telefonleitung leider. Tja, Chris, du hast jetzt nur ganz andächtig zugehört. Was ging dir so durch den Kopf während der Sendung?
Ja, du hast recht, ich habe wirklich nur andächtig zugehört jetzt einmal. Schaut, dass wir jetzt Schluss machen müssen eigentlich.
Ja, aber wir hätten, irgendwer hat was dagegen gehabt, dass wir weitermachen.
Ja, es ist komisch.
Vielleicht die Sonnenwinde, ne?
Es ist komisch, dass es gerade bei dem Punkt Disinformation begonnen hat, die Störung.
War das so? Ich
habe es so im Hinterkopf, also da ist es mir aufgefallen das erste Mal.
Oh ja, da sieht man es wieder mal, die Verschwörungspraktik.
Ja.
Was haltest du von dem ganzen Thema generell?
Ich finde es interessant, aber ich kann weder sagen, was da ist, noch was da nicht ist, aber ich finde es ist ein ziemlich spannendes Thema. Also
ist es, ja. Vor allem, weil ja eben, wie auch im Chat jemand geschrieben hat,
mir hat vor allem diese Geschichte mit der NASA, die er vorher erzählt hat, interessiert, dass wir das Objekt eigentlich schon länger forschen.
Ja, das sagt ja auch Manfred Zimmel.
Ich würde da gerne mal ein Bild sehen oder sowas, oder wie groß da wenn das Hubble-Teleskop dorthin geht. Und, ich würde gerne mal so eine Aufnahme sehen, ganz einfach.
Ja, und das Interessante ist ja eben, also das hat man auch irgendwie sehr spannend gefunden in den letzten Wochen, dass ja Sedna, dieser 10. Planetoid, wie auch immer, entdeckt worden ist. Und der ist auch immerhin einen Durchmesser von 1700 Kilometern.
Richtig,
ich habe es ja in den Newser gebracht. Und man hat ihn auch erst jetzt entdeckt mit alten Teleskopen, mit alter Technik. Es ist eben nicht so einfach, ein kleines Objekt ist da, ich meine, ein Planet ist ein relativ kleines Objekt, vor allem wenn er so weit entfernt ist dann, wie Sedna eben ist, zu entdecken. Und naja, es könnte ja durchaus sein, dass wir tatsächlich eine Twin Sun, also eine Zwillingssonne in diesem Sonnensystem haben, wie in den meisten anderen auch. Ne? Die Frage ist natürlich, sind seine Auswirkungen so katastrophal, wie das Leute wie Mark Hazlewood und andere...
Ich nehme an, vom Entdecken her ist es vielleicht wirklich so, wie es in dem Film Contact einmal kurz gesagt wurde, der Himmel ist groß und die Budgets sind klein, das in Wahrheit ja nur ein relativ kleiner Ausschnitt des Himmels wirklich permanent beobachtet oder überwacht wird. Ja,
so ist es. Ja.
Wenn man Glück hat, zischt halt irgendwas durch, wenn man Pech hat.
Ja.
Nicht.
Na gut.
Ja, wie er gesagt hat, dass es eine Sonne ist, die nicht gezündet hat, das sagt man ja eigentlich vom Jupiter auch.
Das sagt man vom Jupiter auch, aber beim Jupiter ist wahrscheinlich der Prozess überhaupt nicht in Gang gekommen, weil da ist ja noch eine Gaswolke. Ne? Also
richtig, aber er gibt auch mehr Energie
ja, so wie Saturn und ich glaube auch Neptun. Ich glaube, Saturn gibt am meisten, dreimal so viel Energie, wie es empfangt hat. Ja, unser Sonnensystem ist voller Geheimnisse und das ist ja toll. Ne? Das ist ja gut, wir sind am Ende so ziemlich. Das nächste Mal geht's wieder um ganz was Besonderes. Nicola Wohlgemuth ist zu Gast. Um was es genau geht, weiß ich nicht. Wo immer uns der Wind auch hinträgt, sage ich jetzt einmal. So wie heute mehr oder weniger. Okay, ich bedanke mich fürs Zuhören und freue mich schon aufs nächste Mal. Auf Wiederhören.